Most men spend their whole lives believing women want complicated things from them. They think women want expensive gifts, non-stop attention, or some perfect Hollywood-level romance. But here's the truth. Almost no one ever says out loud, women only want one thing, and it's not what most men assume. And the only reason this truth feels surprising is because society has taught men to chase, perform, impress, and sacrifice themselves just to get something as simple as connection. So if you're a man watching right now, especially a man over 50 or 60, I want you to relax into this message, because what I'm about to share will finally make sense of every confusing moment you've experienced with women in your lifetime. It will explain the good relationships, the broken ones, the heartbreaks, and the moments you walked away, unsure of what went wrong. And yes, this truth applies whether you're dating, divorced, married, or simply trying to understand the women around you. The first thing you have to understand is this. Women don't actually want a perfect man. They don't want a flawless man, a wealthy man, or a man who bends himself out of shape trying to fit their expectations. What they want, truly, deeply, and consistently, is a man who makes them feel something. Not something material, not something expensive, not something dramatic, but something emotional. Women, psychologically speaking, are wired to seek emotional security and emotional predictability, not material perfection. Decades of studies from relationship researchers like Dr. Sue Johnson and Dr. John Gottman show that women gravitate toward emotional stability more than any physical or financial trait. But here's where the misunderstanding happens between men and women. Men show love through action, loyalty, provision, and consistency. Women show love through connection, attention, and emotional closeness. So while a man thinks, I provided, I stayed loyal, I worked hard, I showed up, a woman might be thinking, but I didn't feel connected to him. Many men over 50 say this exact sentence when their relationships end. I did everything for her, and somehow it still wasn't enough. And that's because what a woman wants, that one thing, is not your effort alone, but the emotional experience she gets from being close to you. Now, let's clarify, because this often gets misunderstood. Emotional experience does not mean drama. It does not mean chaos. It does not mean being her therapist or her emotional punching bag. It simply means being a man who is grounded enough in himself that she can feel steady around you. A woman doesn't chase money. She doesn't chase looks. She doesn't chase status. She chases the feeling of emotional safety that only a grounded man can create, even without saying many words. That's why older men, especially men over 50 or 60, can actually be more attractive than younger men in today's dating world. They are calmer. They've lived life. They're not frantic. They're not trying to prove themselves. They're not competing with the noise of social media. They're not living for validation. Women today constantly feel overstimulated. Stress, work, expectations, digital comparison, emotional pressure, all of it overwhelms them. And when a woman meets a man who is steady, emotionally grounded, internally peaceful, and clear about who he is, she feels something she rarely feels anywhere else. Calm. That calmness is the one thing she wants. And when a man carries that calm in his presence, she naturally wants to be near him. She wants his voice. She wants his attention. She wants his energy, not his effort. She chases him, not because of what he does, but because of how she feels next to him. Let me share a simple example you might relate to. Think about a time you went through something stressful in your life, maybe a health issue, a financial problem, or a family situation. And then someone came along, maybe a friend, maybe a partner, maybe even a stranger, who spoke to you calmly, patiently, without judgment or panic. Do you remember how your nervous system relaxed? How your breathing slowed down? How your thinking became clearer? That's the experience women are seeking in a relationship, a man whose presence makes them exhale. This is also why so many men today are confused when women seem to lose interest for no obvious reason. They think they must not be good-looking enough, wealthy enough, charming enough, or romantic enough. But in reality, the issue is usually the emotional atmosphere. Women retreat from men who feel unstable, insecure, resentful, reactive, or emotionally unpredictable. They move toward men who feel steady, grounded, calm, aware, and emotionally self-controlled. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to become someone else to do this. You simply have to stop trying to impress women and instead focus on being centered within yourself. Women can feel when a man is centered just by the way he breathes, the way he listens, the way he speaks, and the way he moves. When you're centered, you don't chase. You don't argue for validation. You don't try to win her approval. You don't panic when she pulls away. You don't beg for reassurance. You don't explode emotionally. You don't turn cold or passive-aggressive. You stay grounded, aware, observant, and communicative. And that's what makes a woman feel safe enough to come toward you. Now here's where the psychology becomes interesting. There is a concept from attachment theory called secure grounding. It means that a person becomes emotionally open only when they sense the environment is safe enough to soften. And men who have lived life through pain, through work, through responsibility, through aging, through loss, through rebuilding, often develop this natural groundedness without even realizing it. That's why older men, who feel like they have nothing left to prove, often become incredibly emotionally attractive to women, even without trying. Let's go deeper. A woman only wants one thing from a man: emotional security. But that emotional security comes from one place inside the man himself: inner stability. Women are attracted not to what a man gives them, but to what he is within himself. But there's another layer to this truth, the kind most men have never heard. Women want emotional security, yes, but they also want emotional leadership. They want a man who can guide the relationship with calm, confidence, and clarity. This does not mean dominance or control. It means internal leadership, the ability to remain steady when life becomes chaotic. When a woman sees a man who cannot regulate his own emotions, she loses trust. When she sees a man who can stay calm during storms, she becomes loyal. When she sees a man who listens instead of reacting, she opens up. When she sees a man who respects his own boundaries, she respects him more. When she sees a man who doesn't need her approval to feel complete, she becomes drawn to him. This is why women pursue certain men even when those men aren't trying. They feel grounded, they feel safe, they feel emotionally guided. And women chase the feeling, not the man. That's the truth almost no one talks about. Now that you understand the foundation, the one thing women want most is emotional security. Let's go deeper into why modern relationships feel so complicated for men, and why women today often struggle to connect in the way older generations did. You see, modern society has changed women in profound ways. They are more independent, more stressed, more pressured, and more overstimulated than ever before. And while independence itself is not the problem, the emotional consequences of modern life have created a situation many men don't fully recognize. Women today are encouraged to be everything at once: strong, soft, independent, emotional, fierce, nurturing, career-focused, family-focused, socially active, physically fit, spiritually balanced, endlessly available, and perfectly in control. This constant pressure creates an internal conflict even if they don't admit it. And when women are overwhelmed, they unconsciously search for one thing in a partner: a sense of grounding, something they rarely feel within themselves. But here's where it gets complicated. A woman might want emotional safety from a man, but if she herself is stressed, anxious, or emotionally unregulated, she can accidentally sabotage that connection. She may test him. She may pull away. She may criticize. She may push him for reassurance. She may become distant or emotional at unpredictable times. Confuses men deeply. Men often take these behaviors personally, interpreting them as rejection, disapproval, or dissatisfaction. But most of the time, those behaviors are not about him at all. They're about her own emotional instability, her own internal fears, her own stress, or her own inability to regulate her emotions. A man over 50 or 60 has usually lived long enough to recognize this emotional turbulence in others. And that's why older men are often better at managing it, not by trying to fix it, but by understanding it. Younger men often try to argue with women's emotions, debate them, correct them, or run away from them. Older men have the advantage of wisdom. They understand that most emotions don't need fixing. They just need steady presence. But presence doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. Emotional leadership is not about allowing chaos. It's about setting gentle, clear boundaries while remaining calm. For example, if a woman becomes overwhelmed and starts projecting stress onto you, instead of reacting with anger or withdrawing in silence, emotional leadership might sound like, "Let's slow down for a moment. I want to understand you, but I won't respond until we both feel calm." That single sentence is powerful. It tells her you're there, you care, but you won't allow emotional spirals to control the conversation. And that emotional containment, that calm confidence, makes women feel safe. This leads to the most important lesson of all. Women want emotional security, but the only men who can provide it consistently are those who already have internal peace. A woman cannot feel calm around a man who is at war with himself. That's why men who are centered, confident, self-aware, and emotionally stable end up becoming irresistible to women without even trying. But here's the irony. Most men over 60 don't realize they already possess the very qualities women chase. You've lived life. You've survived hardships. You've learned patience. You've developed resilience. You've grown wiser. You've experienced loss and recovery. And all of that has shaped you into a man who naturally radiates emotional steadiness. You may not be loud. You may not be flashy. You may not be dramatic. But you possess the one trait younger men struggle with, emotional maturity. Now let's address something men often ask. If women chase emotional stability, why do so many of them choose men who are unstable, unreliable, or even irresponsible? Psychology explains this clearly. Women sometimes confuse emotional intensity with emotional connection. Younger women in particular may chase passion, excitement, or chaos, mistaking those sensations for love. But as they grow older, as life becomes heavier, as responsibilities increase, they begin recognizing the value of stability, the kind that older men often carry naturally. This is also why many women regret leaving good, stable men earlier in life. They didn't realize at the time that emotional stability is the rarest, most valuable trait a man can have. But here's the good news. As a mature man, you are now in a stage where emotional stability is not just something you value, it's something you embody. And women who are emotionally mature themselves will be drawn to that like a magnet. Let's move to the deeper layers of the truth women cannot hide anymore. Women want emotional security. But emotional security comes from one thing inside the man, self-respect. When a man respects himself, women feel it instantly. When a man lacks self-respect, women feel that too. Self-respect shows up in your tone, your boundaries, your posture, your speech, your decisions, and how you carry yourself in moments of stress. A woman can sense within seconds if you are a man who values himself. Men who respect themselves don't tolerate chaos. They don't chase. They don't beg. They don't argue to prove their worth. They don't get dragged into emotional drama. They don't lose their identity in relationships. They don't become overly accommodating. And they never give up their peace. When a woman meets a man like this, she automatically treats him differently. She becomes more responsive, more feminine, more respectful, more loyal, more emotionally open. Why? Because she senses the leadership, the stability, the backbone. Now let's address the emotional dynamic that causes men the most confusion. Why women pull away even when things seem to be going well? The reason is simple. Women fear emotional vulnerability more deeply than men realize. When a woman starts developing feelings, she unconsciously tests the emotional safety of the relationship. Those tests are not about manipulation. They're about subconscious reassurance. She wants to know, is he steady? Is he safe? Will he stay himself even if I get emotional? And when a man passes those tests, calmly, gently, without ego, she becomes devoted. Let me offer a real-life example many older men will understand. Imagine a woman tells you she needs space, she feels overwhelmed. A younger man might panic and chase her. An insecure man might become angry or desperate. But an emotionally stable man simply says, take the time you need. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not losing myself. That sentence alone can make a woman melt, because it's not emotional neediness, it's emotional leadership. But the real final truth is this. Women only want one thing, emotional security. But men can only offer that when they are connected to their own inner peace. And here's the profound part. Women don't fall in love with men who give them everything. They fall in love with men who give them emotional clarity, stability, and direction. So if you are a man over 60, here's your advantage. You already have the life experience to be this man. You don't need to change yourself. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You just need to release the old belief that you must impress women through effort. Instead, attract them with emotional stability. Because the truth is, when a man is emotionally grounded, women feel safe. And when they feel safe, they chase him. This is the truth. Women can't hide anymore. Emotional security is their deepest desire. And emotional stability is a mature man's greatest strength. When those two meet, connection becomes effortless.